My name is Joan Weiss, and I am chairperson of the election committee. Due to the fact that John is running for the board, I have recused myself from any connection, any activity with the election committee. I would like to introduce Lynn Michaels, who will be acting election committee chair for this year. Lynn?
Thank you. Thank you, fellow residents. I'm hoping that with this evening and the afternoon tomorrow that many of you will have your questions answered and be on the way to making your decisions to vote. We will be videotaping these proceedings, as you see by the camera there, and this video will be made available on the Siena website. We have 5 residents vying for 2 positions. One of the candidates previously mentioned, Stan Abernow, has voluntarily decided not to run. So we have the 5 candidates that you see here. They are, and you can wave your hand, they're in alphabetical order: Arn Lieberman, Jerry McElroy, Paul Medill, I was seated out over there, but it doesn't matter. Paul Medill, Harvey Rubenstein, and John Weiss. The way that this evening will work is that in the alphabetical order, actually in the order, in the order that it is that they're seated, each candidate will have 3 minutes to introduce themselves and present what they feel is important things for you to know about them. After that, the members of the audience who come up to the microphone, which is located right in the center front, will have 1 minute to ask a question. If it gets to be 30 seconds and you haven't gotten to your question, I will ring the little bell, and that should alert you that you've got 30 seconds left to ask your question. In rotating order, each candidate will have a chance to be first in responding, and each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond. We are asking that you not ask a specific question of a specific candidate. If you have a question that you would like answered, ask it in a general sense, and when it gets to the candidate that you are interested in hearing their answer, when it gets to them, they will then answer the question that you have in mind, in turn. With 5 candidates responding, this might tend to be a long meeting, so we will adhere to all time limits. We have in the front row Vivian Barning and Sandy Sedgwick, who are the timers and are the people that will be notifying the candidates of how much time they have left in, 2 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds, and so forth. If the person asking a question goes over 1 minute, and I said I will give you a 30-second warning, the mic will be turned off. The microphone is there, as I pointed out. Line up in an orderly fashion to ask your question. At the end of the entire question and answer period, when there are no more residents lining up to ask a question, each candidate, in reverse alphabetical order, will have 2 minutes for their closing comments. We ask that the audience, each questioner, and each candidate be polite and respectful to each other. And they will be waiting around at the end of the meeting. So if you have specific questions, you can mingle with them later. So we are going to start now with the opening comments from each candidate. So we will start with Arn Lieberman.
Good evening. My name is Arn Lieberman. I want to take this time to introduce myself and to tell you what I hope to achieve if elected to the board. About 4 years ago, my wife BJ and I started looking for a place to spend the next chapter of our lives. We visited all over and were quite disappointed with what we found. Finally, on our way back from a trip to the grandkids, we stopped off at Siena, where a friend of ours had previously purchased a house. As soon as we drove in, we fell in love with the place. So we talked and talked for hours, called the kids, checked the accounts. We analyzed and analyzed from every point of view. Then we bought our own house here in Siena that very same weekend. How's that for informed, decisive action? We got all the inputs, saw all the points of view, and acted. Well, that's what I've been doing all my working life for some of the largest corporations in the country. I even have a PhD focused on decision making from the Stanford University Graduate Business School. Because my wife and I love living here in Siena so much, I admit to a strong desire to give back. I want to serve this community with the skills that I have developed over the last 4 decades in how to arrive at decisions fairly with all the inputs and all the points of view considered. So I participate in chats with the board. I serve on committees and even chair an ad hoc committee that is charged by the board to look at what premier communities like ours are offering as amenities and services. If you can, come to the next board meeting on October 14. I will be giving a quick slideshow on some of the interesting amenities we are finding at premier communities like ours throughout the country. By being on the board, I want to help this community stay safe, be prosperous, and remain the #1 community of its type. I want to enhance our positive community feeling and get rid of the anger we sometimes hear. How? By changing the way we arrive at decisions and by enhancing the ways we include resident input. I want to change the way agendas are broadcast and committee discussions are structured so that resident input is allowed before a vote is taken. It won't be easy. I want to work with the committee chairman to find a way to make it happen to the benefit of both residents and the committees. Finally, I want to achieve better reporting of what committees and the board are doing. Residents want to know what is happening, not just what has already happened. Reporting to you what the committees and the board are doing is really important. I think it can help us do a much better job. I want to use my experience and my enthusiasm and my talents to raise up to a professional level the quality of communications to you, the residents. That's something I know I can do, and you deserve it. Thank you.
Next person up to hear from is Paul Medill.
Good evening. My name is Paul Medill. I've been a resident of Siena for 2 years, but I also bring a fresh point of view. During my time at Siena, I've had the privilege of working on the Properties Committee and also being involved in a number of Siena clubs. As a result, I've had the opportunity to work with many of the Siena directors, a number of community members or committee members, as well as club members. I have 50 years experience in engineering, manufacturing, and management. I have an MBA and I am a certified accountant. I previously have served as president and executive vice president of a number of companies. I'm a fiscal conservative who has been responsible for establishing annual budgets and performing to those budgets. I've set up operations in the US, Europe, Japan, and China. I have previously served as a director and officer of a smaller upscale gated senior community in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. I also have served on a number of domestic and foreign corporate boards of directors. I've been involved in making difficult decisions in extremely difficult times and circumstances. I was an executive director for a large trade association and received the Lifetime Award from the Association for Service. I've seen good people and smart people make decisions that adversely affected their communities and their companies. This frequently happened because they failed to make the difficult decisions even though they recognized that the future problem was imminent. If elected to the board, I will work with the board to review our master plan. I will use our committees as an integral part of the decision process. I will work with CCMC staff to set specific guidelines to ensure that vendors are properly documented and our facilities are properly maintained. I will review staffing levels and compare our staffing levels with other communities to see we're properly staffed. I will also base decisions on what is best for the entire community, not one particular group. I will also do relentless follow-up. Many times things get started and not finished on time or on budget. What gets measured gets done. I will keep the residents informed of board decisions and schedules through the internet, community monitors and computers, and make published material available in the Rotunda area. I appreciate and encourage the input of residents, and it appears to me we have many sources of sounding boards within this community. I know that there are many Siena residents who are living on restricted income. However, we still must be diligent to maintain our standards. Thank you.
Our next candidate is Jerry McElroy.
Good evening. I'm going to read this because it takes 2 minutes and 47 seconds. If I talk about it, I'll be here until next Thursday, so this will keep me on the right time here. My name is Jerry McElroy, and I'm the Common Sense candidate, and I'm asking for your vote for the Siena Board of Directors. If elected, I'll work to control spending, promote courtesy, and preserve Siena's resort-like lifestyle. Now, I've lived in Siena for nearly 16 years, and I'd considered running for the board in the past, but was still working part-time and thought it was unfair to the homeowners and the community association. But now I've retired full-time, and I have a lot of time available, and that's actually how I became an alternate on the Finance Committee. And there I became concerned about how we spend money. And I also learned that the only way to change that, the only body that can really change that, is the Board of Directors. So here I am. Now, by way of background, I have over 50 years of business and management experience, starting in my early 20s as a general manager for Calop's Pharmacy, a large retail pharmacy in Pasadena. As a retail store manager, I learned a lot about business and controlling spending. Of course, I also learned how to lay on the floor while being robbed at gunpoint. I learned how to respond to 3 a.m. alarm calls because someone smashed the window out of the building, and those pesky customers and employees that like to leave the store without paying for their merchandise. Fast forward some 30 years, you find me in Reno, and I'm manager for Donnery Outdoor Advertising. Another great lesson in controlling spending, but I also learned the importance of everyone getting along, even with the competitors. Before I got to Reno, none of the outdoor companies spoke to each other, and Washoe County had a sign ordinance that was designed to put the outdoor companies out of business. So I got all the outdoor companies to work together and actually speak to each other, and you know what? We became good friends, still competitors, but good friends. Now what I see in Siena is somewhat of the same thing that I found in Reno. There's an awful lot of this us versus them, residents versus staff, staff versus the board. And you find in many communities there are also a few residents that are only concerned about themselves and don't really care about anyone else. So I'd like to put together some programs that promote activities that will foster friendly relationships with all the residents. And finally, like I said, I've been here nearly 16 years, and I've watched the desert transform into one of Las Vegas' premier upscale communities. Now I'm concerned that we're starting to decay back into the desert, actually. We're slowly losing that wow factor that was the original design, and I'd like to work to maintain and improve this as a premier resort-like community. So again, my name is Jerry McElroy. I ask for your vote. Also remember, I'm retired, so I've pretty much got all the time you can think of, and just think of the trouble I can cause. Thank you.
Our next candidate is Harvey Rubenstein.
Good evening. Good evening, fellow homeowners and stakeholders in Siena. As I look around the room, I think I know 98% of you, and I think you all know me. My wife and I, Arlene, moved to Siena 6 years ago, and in that time period, I have attended safety committee meetings, property committee meetings, landscape, and finance committee meetings. I think I know the issues that are affecting all of us. In the handout that you have is a resume of my background, which is that I'm a retired federal government employee who trained and educated companies to do business worldwide. So I know the whole gamut of management, marketing, and international trade. Here in Nevada, I'm a member of the Nevada District Export Council, where we analyze companies and train them to do business internationally. And I have a coach down at UNLV for companies that are interested in exporting and to improve their exporting. In New Jersey, where we lived, I was a state certified planner. That incorporates almost all of the skills necessary to have neighbors live in peace. I'm a graduate of Baruch College, where I learned all the skills of management, marketing, decision-making. You can expect me to do the following things if elected to the board. I will be a good steward of the Siena HOA funds. I will not spend money recklessly. I have an open mind and will be attentive to all homeowners' concerns. I will work to preserve and enhance Siena's lifestyle and value of our homes, and I hope I will make a strong contribution to the overall improvements of our community that will benefit all residents. I hope you will vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Harvey. And our next candidate, is Dawn Weiss.
Hello, everyone. Vivian, when you have the timing thing, would you just keep it pointed at me? So I'll keep, that's it. Thank you. So, hello all. My wife, Joan, and I have lived here for a glorious 14 years. We pinch ourselves just about every other day saying, how did we wind up in such a great place? We love it here, and we both work to keep this community as good as it is. You just met my wife, Joan, earlier. Unfortunately, she cannot be here to run things. Of course, I know she'd have done a great job, as she does every year, because I took her place here. I'm a candidate. For those of you who regularly attend our board meetings, you've seen me in action well over 50 times. You're completely familiar with the value I bring to our board. For those of you who are fairly new to Siena or have recently decided to become more involved, I bring clarity to issues and dedication to getting things done right. There may be times when you'll not agree with my positions, but you will appreciate that I always act in ways I believe are best for our community. I have no hidden agendas. What you see is what you're going to get. My last presentation to our community was about a year ago, going over the board's key objectives results for 2014. For the first time, I gave you, our homeowners, a role in the appraisal of your board's performance. If I recall correctly, you evaluated our performance just a scotch lower than my original evaluation. Pretty good. One example of my insistence on going the extra mile to keep costs contained involved the fix proposed for a fire alarm system last year. I was the only director to push back on the recommendation that we have the original vendor patch it for what I consider to be an outrageous sum of money. We eventually arrived at a much lower cost solution by scrapping our original fire alarm system and completely redoing and upgrading it with a new vendor. I also conceived of and implemented the election message board, which I hope you all get to use because it's a great innovation, and learn how to get into it because it isn't intuitively obvious, and I hope our management makes it clear what we need to do to use that message board. If you look at my flyer, you'll notice I spend an inordinate amount of space discussing my work history. I do so to offer evidence of my ability to look out ahead in time and assert leadership in getting things done now to avert future problems. When my time's up. Okay, the rest of it will be done in my 2 minutes later. Thank you for your time and attention.
If you have a question to ask these candidates, would you please line up in order at the microphone where Peter is just now walked over to. And remember, people, to address it to the candidates as a whole, and if possible, give your name as well.
Good evening. My name is Anita Jagged, and the question is, if elected, would you vote for the appointment of a board member's spouse to be chairperson or member of a committee?
What, we will start with Arn Lieberman. Does anybody need her to clarify her question?
You're talking about our own spouse or somebody else's spouse?
If elected, would you vote for the appointment of a board member's spouse to be chairperson or member of a committee?
I understand the question, thank you. To me, it makes no difference if you're man or woman, spouse or no spouse. If you're qualified for a position, of course I would vote for you. If you are the most qualified. I have no qualifications on that. Thank you.
Paul, it is your turn to answer that question.
I also don't have a problem with the spouse being on a committee. Although for as far as the chairman of the committee, I would, in my case, I would probably ask my spouse not to be the chairman of the committee.
Jared?
Good question, Anita. I don't have an answer, but a good question. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, I think they shouldn't be the chairman of a committee. If they served on a committee, that's a little bit different. But no, not as a chairman, but they could be on a committee.
Harvey?
I have no problem with a spouse being on a committee. We all belong to the same community. You don't stop a spouse from participating in a community.
Anita, I think your question was chairperson, not on committee. And as a,
Both.
as a committee member or a chairperson, as long as the spouse was qualified, I don't have any objection to them serving in any way possible that they can serve. After all, this is a community that wants its best people doing their work for all of us. And I really don't see a significant conflict of interest with a board member having a spouse on one of the committees.
Thank you.
Steve Foreman, this is basically directed on. First question, and I'd like to get a yes or a no.
Sir, we would like a question addressed to the group as a whole, and then each person will have a chance to answer. You'll hear the answer to that person.
Okay, does the group really think that the committee for the ad hoc committee will, the board will listen to any of their suggestions? That is the first question. And the second question is regarding landscaping. If any of the gentlemen should be on the board, do you think you'd be able to influence and change and stop the landscaping from going any further?
First person to answer that will be Paul.
I'm a big believer in the ad hoc committee, the outreach committee. I believe there will be tremendous benefits that will result from there. I've asked already to get some information from Arn and other members of the committee. I think it's a tremendous job and it will help us chart our course for our community in the future. As far as the landscape committee goes, I know there's a lot of work that went into the landscape committee. And for many people's taste, maybe it was a little bit overdone. Rosemary is not my favorite plant, but apparently they've got it in an area where it has a better chance to grow. I think that we've gone far enough down the road that it would be very difficult to stop and change it and probably would be counterproductive.
Jerry?
Well, I think that if I'm elected to the board, I would definitely pay attention to what the ad hoc committees had to say. In fact, what all the committees have to say. So, and I can't address whether or not the board would do it, but as a board member myself, I would definitely pay attention to what they have to say. As far as the landscaping goes, I think at this point, for the phase that's done, we're pretty much dead in the water. We're pretty much stuck with what we're gonna have. I've heard a lot of people complain that they don't think it has the wow factor that we've been accustomed to, and that's exactly what I said in my opening statement there, that I think we're losing that wow factor in there. There's a lot of things that could be done, or could have, or should have been done, but I think we're kind of stuck with it. Hopefully going forward, we can fix it, but again, we gotta fix it with what the money we have to spend. We can't just, write checks that we don't have the money for. So, I'd like to change it, but I don't think realistically, I don't think we can.
Harvey?
I certainly would keep an open mind to the outreach that was done, because you can't live in an insular type of a situation. A younger generation in us is looking around for a place to retire, a place to live. You have to know what your competition is. So I would certainly keep an open mind. With respect to the Rosemary, I mean, people complain that the Rosemary was shabby. Rabbits hang out in there. Rats hang out in there. Scorpions hang out in there. If you want to put some rosemary in, fine. But to me, it looks like overkill with the rosemary. And if the present board doesn't do anything about it, I think that they're creating a terrible situation for us with all of that rosemary.
Dawn?
Well, as a board member or in making decisions in any part of my life, I always value information. So what the ad hoc committee is doing, I applaud, because having that level of information available to you to perhaps guide us in a better direction is always a positive as far as I'm concerned. As far as the landscape committee, I'm not a landscape expert. I don't know from Rosemary or what. I do know that the landscape committee had a 5-year plan that the board approved, that their expenditures were on budget, and they're proceeding according to a plan, that there was a presentation made to the community, they got community input, they're proceeding along those lines. I certainly, as a board member, would monitor and make sure that they are proceeding along the lines that we expect them to, but I do not have a problem with what has been done so far.
Arn?
Your first question is close to my heart. I'll interpret it this way. Do I really think the board will use the information that we generate from the ad hoc committee? And yes, if you mean use the information to be informed of what's out there in the communities, if you mean, do I think Siena will actually build or acquire some of these amenities we found, then my answer is possibly, though not probably, for major amenities and services, and possibly more like 50-50 for ones that are attractive and require no land or major funds. I encourage you all to come to the next board meeting and see the slideshow. It's a kind of, so what do they have that we don't have show? And different items will appeal to different people. But if we want to keep Siena the #1 community of its type, we need to know what these other communities are doing. And that alone is justification for the work of the committee. Now your second question, I'll interpret as, why have all the grass gone? I love the elegant look of a manicured lawn. And I understand the need to save water by moving from plants that require sprinkling to those that require only drip. But it's not only savings from water use that's being considered. We'll soon be spending a lot of money fixing the water damage done to the concrete of our curbs caused by water sprinkling. It makes sense to me to stop the damage now and to continue to save water now and do it on our schedule so that we stay ahead of future conditions where we have to spend more money later. Frankly, I wanted to keep the manicured lawns. It was that look of Siena driving down the entrance that sold us in this community, and I'd be willing to pay a little more for that. But I'm also a realist. I see the mounting pressure to save water coming down the pike in our future, and this would no longer be a matter of choice. I reluctantly agree with the recommendations of the Landscaping Committee and the decision of the board. We are smart to start dealing with it now. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Hi, I'm sorry to see 5 more males running for the board, or 5 more white males. I did prepare some comments, but you sort of changed the guidelines. I'm not going to adhere completely since you didn't tell us in advance. But here goes. Siena residents have been promised repeatedly for open and transparent communication by both aspiring and elected board members. This, of course, has not happened. Substantial expenditures have been committed to without any disclosure to residents until after the fact.
We need a question.
I will give you a question at the end of my time.
We need a
As a
question
member of
within
the
30
property-
seconds.
I'm sorry?
Within 30 seconds.
Fine. Mr. Maddow, your performance on the Properties Committee has been kind of quiet about preparing a sports court. This is without, you had the opportunity to present it before the board in the last 6 months. You haven't done that.
Your time is up. What is your question?
My question is, how will you convince the residents of Siena that if elected, you will commit to full disclosure and transparency in light of your current tactics?
All right, this question will be directed to the board, to the candidates as a whole. We'll start with Jerry McElroy, and we'll get around to
I need a little clarification, because I've never been on the Properties Committee.
No, I know. My question, they didn't tell us ahead of time that we had to have a question for the entire committee. My question was specifically for Paul.
Okay,
What is the
But I'd like, you can all answer
What is your question?
the question is,
Because I haven't
how
found the
will you
question.
commit to full transparency and disclosure if you're elected to the board?
Well, I have a number of ideas for improving what goes out in the Siena style, a number of ideas for improving the email blasts that go out to the community. Proof that I can do that is, if you've seen the video that I prepared over there for myself in there, I put that together in there, just how I've campaigned for myself, gives you an idea that you can get it out to the community. So, am I missing something? Because I'm not sure I understand.
The question wasn't really for you. That's fine. That's a great answer.
Yeah, I can do it. Trust me, I had a number of years in media and in addition to the other things. So getting the information out won't be the problem.
Harvey.
Well, the HOA is governed by the state NRS rules, so it's, in terms of getting information out, I think we practice what the state tells us to do. We have an agenda, it's published, it's put out there for everybody to attend meetings. If you can't make a meeting, there's minutes that are read at the following meeting. So I have no problem with the way we're set up in terms of procedures and practices. With reference to what you're talking about, the sports court or out there, I attended the property meeting. I heard the comments of the committee members. I heard the comments of the people that were there. I took it upon myself to go to Eric and to give him a suggestion for a shuffleboard court, which I didn't